Well, here we are. Another episode of the podcast we like to call Create or Die. I'm your host, Ike Allred, and we've got some pretty sweet news that we're about to drop here. That's right. It's official. This is episode 40. Can you believe it? I can't. We're knocking on the door of 52 episodes, which will mean that we've been doing this for a year. Create or Die, a year. I've met a lot of cool people. I've learned more about people I already knew. And I hope you've enjoyed the walk down this journey for this first year, this experiment. And we're not letting up. I know I said on the outset that I'm going to do a year, and we'll see how it goes, and maybe we won't continue. But you've been doing your part. You've been telling your friends. You've been telling your family. The audience is growing. I'm all in. Talked about my truck being wrapped. We're going to get that back in the next day or two, and I'll be driving around up here in northern Utah. And if you see us, give us a wave. But today we've got a special episode, Independence Day, 4th of July related. My boy Trevor Williams, animator, illustrator, creative guy, all around cool dude, is back on the program with an idea that he had. He wanted us to maybe go through the process, talk a little bit more about what it takes to create an illustration, in this case for a t-shirt. There were several of us at MX who threw our design into the ring, and Trevor and I are going to talk about our process. And so if that sounds interesting to you and you're ready to proceed, then just stay with me. All right. Well, if you're still here and you've decided you want to proceed and dive in to the deep end of the pool with Trevor and I as we talk about what it takes to come up with an illustration for a t-shirt in a short amount of time, we're talking, 2-3 days, then buckle up. We're going to do this. But for those of you that want to get off the bus now, go ahead, pull the rope, and on your way out, don't forget to subscribe to the episode, to the series in general, be it on Spotify, Apple, or YouTube. We'll take it, and appreciate the support. Without further ado, my boy. So as far as this episode goes, we've got this whole Independence Day, which maybe you've forgotten about. No, because you're over there.
No. Still love my Stars and Stripes.
Awesome. Hey, we had a fun project at work recently that I thought would be fun to chat about and kind of...
I thought this was a cool time to kind of open up the hood and just say what happens when you sometimes get a fast deadline, a quick ask that might pounce on you. Like in essence, you may have known about this longer than I did, but it wasn't until about the last minute that I said, well, hey, Trev, maybe you can put forth an idea here as well and contribute if you have time. And at the moment, I was happy to, just because it was nice to have a different distraction, a different outlet of creativity to go down. But you said, you gave the constraint of let's try to get this done by Friday, maybe Monday, maybe something else, but Friday. And it was, I think, Wednesday or Thursday you started telling. But for me, it's the end of the day, so I essentially just had like Thursday and Friday to kind of work on it. And so under those constraints, the project itself, I made a quick kind of commentary and video on a time lapse of the actual work I did on it and the brainstorming and that we can refer to or link to, hopefully. But but in that, I had the ask was to create a very obnoxious t-shirt design that really celebrated the qualities of America and just to make it have this vibe of deal with it and patriotism, and definitely wanted maybe some eagles in there, or founding presidents that are on everything that is America, or the Statue of Liberty, or something that just says America, but you could also make it barbecues and hamburgers and any other thing that was like a cultural stereotype, and just make it fun. And so I was brainstorming. I was thinking of taking the 4 presidents on Mount Rushmore, making it into kind of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse in a fun style, and a very epic style. I wanted like Jefferson on an eagle with laser beams, and Lincoln on a bear, same thing, laser beams or something. I wanted Roosevelt.
Yeah, you can't have too many laser beams.
Yeah, exactly. But it would be something else, right? He'd have a trident, and on his trident there's like hamburgers and hot dogs and barbecue things, and maybe it's like a war horse with like, instead of war drums, it's just barbecue barbecues that are sitting there that he's roasting stuff on. But and then Roosevelt in some kind of motorcycle or dune buggy with grenade launchers, but they're hamburger launchers and stuff like that. So it's going to be a very fun and crazy scene and complex, and that was one concept. And I got to thinking that with the time frame I had, I couldn't illustrate all of that in a short amount of time.
What do you do? Are you telling me it's easier to just illustrate one character than it is 4? I thought.
Yeah, exactly. So I narrowed my scope down. If I had a week, I could definitely pull off a few thumbnails to a certain level of artistic clarity to present and try to say, hey, do you like this concept or this concept? And then narrow it down and say, okay, I'll work on this one, and then polish that. And in the video, you can see me really take first my thumbnail scribble that I did in Photoshop. And then I'm starting to just redefine that and kind of bring clarity to it, and redefine the silhouettes and the design, and then press it forward till finally I'm happy with those, and put on the final strokes and the actual colors and the final lines, right? But through that process, I still come up with things that I had to, challenges and hiccups and points where I had to get creative. So one of those specific times where I was hung up was on, I was thinking, my concept was going to say, I was thinking between a bear or a velociraptor, and I went with the velociraptor because I think they put Reagan on a velociraptor in the past or something fun, and I thought, okay, let's do some more of let's just keep playing with some of this as well, not to mimic it exactly, but to just kind of bring more to light on presidents on such things. I thought Roosevelt, and I thought he would be easy to see. He was kind of
the adventurer type of a guy. Yeah. He was known for, you see him on horses and in pictures.
And that's why I thought, let's put him on a velociraptor. Let's have him be fun with I thought, okay, I could put him on there with some bazooka that was launching hamburgers. And so if you can start to picture that image. And then from there, I thought I could get his specific cheesy grin and his mustache and his glasses or whatever. I couldn't. It just wasn't working. It wasn't coming, and it was just too small of a detail to the rest of the composition.
Right.
So I thought, what else could be a better a better icon. And it didn't even come to any of the presidents. I just remember the, you know, Uncle Sam with like pointing with the big hat and the goatee, and I'm like, nobody can mistake the goatee, nobody can mistake the hat. So
Yeah.
I redesigned it to be that, which I felt was a lot better, right? I
agree.
But I made him a bare-chested behemoth, kind of a Uncle Sam, and I probably should have put like either a big tattoo on him, like a flag, or I just gave him a hairy chest. But I could have put a tank top on with stars and stripes as well. But at the moment, you know, I'm pressing forward. I'm under pressure with time, and I'm just pressing forward, and I'm still trying to design the Velociraptor. I had an issue with the foot, the back foot. I kind of wanted it in an upward running position, but I already kind of had him at a 3/4 angle, not quite profile, not quite, you know, straight on. And I was struggling with drawing that perfectly. And so I hid it behind another graphic element that I found in my references. And I collected a bunch of references, which you can see on the video. And I put it all in pure ref, which is nice. And I was referring to some things that I liked, which I like this graphic ground element of some smoke and dust. And I just hid the back foot behind that to just keep moving forward, which sometimes you have to do, right? And
yeah, especially when you're in a time constraint.
Yeah, and then I was referring back to my art school days and lessons of like, gotta have a good silhouette. And I had I had this arm in front holding the reins, but it was hidden. So I decided to redesign it where I stretched it out so that you could definitely tell and see the silhouette a little better. Is the silhouette perfect with the Raptor and the figure? No, because I mean there's grenade launchers and everything else, you know, with it, and it doesn't work very, very well. But I was still proud of it because I improved it over and over, of the repetition, the iteration, and just the process of slowly sketching it and kind of redefining it. It was nice because I went inside Procreate, and you can kind of do that quickly. Erase some things, stretch some things, lasso and distort. And so I did a lot of that. And then finally I was happy more or less with the design and started filling it in. But when it came to the color, which is a fun process to start to fill it, I also thought, again, I need to put more red, white, and blue in this. So I did another version where the Raptor is red, white, and blue. And same with some text that I put in there that said Murica. And overall, the biggest thing was to just keep moving forward, and to just, if you get hung up on one part of the process, to then focus on the next little piece that you know you can work on, just so you don't feel panicked and you don't feel like you're so behind and you don't get discouraged. Because if you fall behind and this is a bigger mountain to climb, you're not going to be satisfied. But if you keep the process alive, you keep working different sections, keep blocking in and coming back and going around in circles and circles, you don't feel like you're going around in circles. You just feel like you are making progress, which encourages you and uplifts you to finish, and it uplifts your creativity. Like, you realize, you know, you may focus on one section, but then you step back and take a bigger look, and then you all of a sudden have a spark of inspiration that says, okay, now I know what I want to do for this. After all, you know, it came to me 3 minutes later, you know, and that's part of the process. I think that is some of the most enriching and fun. And do you find that when you're doing it, do you block in something, step away, come back and completely change it, or find that, oh, now I see it more clearly?
Sure.
I mean, what are your takes on some of that?
Yeah, no, I think that those are a lot of good points. And even in this conversation, you've called out some things that maybe if you had more time, you know, you'd go back in and change his outfit or put a tattoo on him, and all things that would have taken away valuable time. And if you just kind of allow yourself to get lost in that one little detail, then you're never finishing something. And so I think you know, that's a good point, and that's something that you have to learn how to do in this commercial art world, is just push through, like you said, until you get something finished, and then you can start looking at it in different ways. Like you put it on the t-shirt mock-up and stepped away and you're like, oh, I can see it needs more America, so you implemented more red, white, and blue. Yeah, exactly. Those are great things. Other helpful techniques are to, you know, flip the whole canvas horizontally. So now you're looking at it from a different direction, and it's like, okay, you know, that Velociraptor looked great from the one side, but now that I flip it, I can see that his eye is off or something. Not that it is. I'm just saying things that you might notice because you're looking at it in a different way. So yeah, I definitely employ some of that as I'm creating things as well.
Yeah. And ultimately, I think the challenge is, like, we did it all as a group. I think there were 4 or 5 of us that designed different concepts, and I know in the end they're kind of going to select one to make. And all that being said, you know, despite the time you put in, I was actually very satisfied with the result in the end. Was it my best work? Probably not, because if I had more time, I probably would have found a higher design that had, you know, ticked off more of the actual design brief and what was required. That would have satisfied perhaps the client even more. But to do it within the time frame and the constraints I had, I felt very satisfied with the final result regardless, because of this specific process and because of just pushing through versus getting discouraged and not having satisfaction in the final result. Like there is a tinge of, I would love to make it better, but that happens with everything we make. I think we could always go back and say, now I could do it faster and I could do it better, but we can only grow by and become better, you know, with that hindsight of saying, okay, now I've gone through the experience. And I think half the time we as creatives can also get hung up on that discouragement of, well, I didn't make the deadline and I'm not that good. And that's where imposter syndrome starts to creep in, or that's where you start to think, am I doing the right thing? Am I in the right career? Am I? And truth, you really can be, and you really have the talent if you just continue, I think, to press and to keep swimming and to keep creating and to keep discovering. And if you need to walk away and take a breather and then come back to it, that's what you got to do. It really does wonders, I think. So
yeah.
But
no,
you
totally
also
agree.
so you designed one as well. You should tell us.
Yeah.
So you heard my side of how I went through problems, solved them. I want to hear every problem you went through, because your design blew me away, and I was so mad once I saw it, just because I was like, well, one, I gotta tell everybody, you waited till everybody else had finished their design. By the way, you like let us all set a bar, and you come in last, saying, okay, at least I know what I'm up against. And you're like, can I now here's the threshold, can I pass it?
Right. And
you had everybody else's creativity out there already, and then you just come in and say, okay, let me drop this mic. And so tell us what you did.
No, I appreciate the compliments, and you know, it wasn't intentional that I posted mine last. It was just the realization that I was really struggling for a long time there. But like you mentioned, and before I forget, it's all about trusting the process, which I've got written on my wall back there, which I think can be scary, because you go through all those emotions where you're like, man, why did I think I could do this? You know, who am I trying to fool? You know, and my initial ideas were similar to yours, in that I wanted to incorporate several of the different American icons, whether it was, Mount Rushmore figureheads, or I ended up working in the Statue of Liberty because I'm like, we got to get some woman into this, design,
right?
Because I'm sensitive to
good point.
Yeah, to like the diversity stuff, like because it's easy to just create things that I would like, and I obviously look up to the founding fathers and everything, but
if you look at my design, it's super machismo. It's like a guy with his chest, bare chest and hair and American, like,
right.
Doesn't have too much of a multi-sex appeal at all. It doesn't cry. It doesn't. It feels more men generated, I would say, for sure, which I think fails because it should be either way, right? Ultimately, the design should.
Yeah, and I was really surprised when I heard the request for this shirt, because I'm like, you sure? I mean, because the person who requested it, I asked her, does this have like executive approval? Like they are okay with doing this over the top nationalism, America, put George Washington on there with sunglasses, because in this day and age we hear people talk about like, oh, well, George Washington had slaves, so therefore everything else he did is moot or whatever,
Well, and Jefferson and all the others from even the thing I was saying, right? So how do you make it unisex? Well, maybe just hot dogs, maybe just hammer, but watermelon.
Right, so I was surprised initially about the request, and some of the designs that I really liked from the and maybe we can flash them up on the screen here in post, but were like the eagle with sunglasses, but then I'm like, oh, that's already been done. And so I was trying to think outside of the box, but the more characters you get on there, the smaller the detail is, so it's harder to read. Right. Some of the same problems you were having with getting Teddy Roosevelt to read from a distance, and so for the longest time I had this idea of playing cards, and I liked that, but on a shirt they would be pretty small, so it was really struggled with that. I had done some hand-drawn America text and tried to find, because again we were on I started maybe a day before you did. We were on a pretty tight timeline where it's like if I can find a font that's close, I can just kind of edit it and I won't have to hand letter everything, and so it was just the deck of cards and then the text like America, a winning hand or something, and I was playing around with some different phrases. Finally ended up with American Royal Flush, thinking that most people that know about poker that's a pretty
highest
good hand. Yeah.
Unbeatable.
Yeah, there you go. And so that's what I went with, but then it was still not quite right, because from a distance it looked like, okay, you got some cards, but it didn't necessarily read. So I used that eagle idea, and I'm like, what if the eagle was holding the hand, and I could put sunglasses on him, and so it was like literally the 11th hour it finally came together. But I was struggling with little doodles, and I was even abandoning that and going to things like Jefferson with an eagle that he was calling and landing on his arm like he was doing falconry type stuff. So yeah, it was a similar struggle, and I didn't mean to be the last one. It just literally took me until that, and honestly I saw yours and it seemed like you're on a different time zone, so it seemed like you did it in like an hour, and I was like, what? That's so fun and energetic, and I've got this deck of playing cards. What can I do to make it better? So you pushed me to another level. So
definitely. So sometimes it comes in clutch to just be the last, and then but no, that's a good point that you made, that we really should try to use a network, whether it's people within house or people remotely, to get eyes on it, comment on it, and they could be the spark that helps push it forward and push it to a better level too. Because we certainly shouldn't rely on our own creative minds to figure out every problem. We can definitely do better as a team, and that's a point you just made. So
I think it was a super fun project. It was good for all of us to get the chance to do something silly and isn't necessarily the company brand, and but I just heard, like, end of the day Friday, like, they were reviewing the designs, went through the ERG and then through different executives and stuff until they were just whittling down, like, no, we can't use this design, we can't use that design, we can't use this until it was basically like, okay, we're gonna come up with something else. so I knew.
All wasted.
I knew. Yeah, but it's not wasted because it's fun, and honestly, if MX doesn't want the design, I may spend some more time on it and put it on somewhere and sell it somewhere.
Yeah, no, that's what's cool is you can totally utilize it for something else and or just gain more traction as to the fact that you've got these skills to do these
so
things.
It was a fun outlet. It's always frustrating when you feel like what you just said is, it was a waste of time, but in the end we still get paid for our time and we got to do something fun. And but I did worry initially when I heard about the request. I heard that, like, one of the executives who was the sponsor of the group, was all in and thought it was an amazing idea and wanted stuff that was even, more maybe pushing the envelope than what we delivered. And
right.
But if we had to try to get it through,
we definitely had some that kept it more safe and more serious, and we had some that were very playful. And so, but that's what you want, especially to give, is a gamut of, well, here's kind of like the range and kind of get their sense. But if there's more cooks in the kitchen, it becomes even more difficult to get any buy off on anything versus
and if you want something that's really gonna be impactful and stand out, it's not gonna be something that everybody can agree on. There's gonna be critics of it, and because people are gonna passionately love it and people are gonna passionately hate it. I can't think of many examples of things that went through this committee and was watered down, and then it became this amazing success. So I've referred to, like, the Apple ad from 1984, if you're familiar with that, where the Olympic runner is
the 1980 that was 1984 George Orwell. It was and mimicking the book.
And here, I read a book like The Trillionaire Coach or something, and I forget the guy's name, Bill Campbell or Coach Campbell, something like that, who was head of marketing at Apple at the time. And this was a time, I think Steve Jobs had just, or maybe it was just before he left or just after. It's probably before he left. But anyways, they put together this commercial and shared it with the board, and the board was like, no way, don't run that, in the Super Bowl.
But it's like one of the most renowned commercials.
Exactly. And the Bruce or the Bill Campbell guy was just like, F it, we're running it, and with the whole board was just like, you're gonna lose your job. It's, don't mess with this. Don't you dare release it. And he did, and then it became the most popular ad of the Super Bowl and one of the best ads of all time. And so sometimes you've got to go with your gut, I think, and push through. Obviously, you don't want to create things that are going to be hurtful or racist or intentionally offensive or anything. But yeah,
that's good. But if it pays off like it did there, I mean, look at how, and obviously, if you're at that point, you're comfortable and you're like, yeah, I'll risk my job on this, that's also something. But how well to trust yourself that passionately about your work and everything you put in to risk it all and to have it pay off. That's awesome. Something that would be really fun to do someday.
Right. Well, and I think, this guy was probably in his 50s, 60s. He'd had some experience. He was obviously at a good place in his career, probably making decent money. Didn't have to work, and so if he lost his job, and he would be fine. But it is harder from someone like you or me, who we have a young family still that depends on us, and to not come from that place of fear. But I think that that's something we should really strive to overcome and do things that aren't from a place of fear. Do things from a place of confidence and just know that if worst case scenario of what you thought would be worst case, you lose your big client or your big job, it's just going to make you that much more attractive, I think, to the right client or the one or the employer that is even that better fit for you, because that's just the way the universe works, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's scary. Doesn't mean that it's easy to do that.
No, just like you said, you're going to have the ones that like it and hate it, and you may end up branching off somewhere else with someone who liked it and and start something else. So, but neither here nor there. It's just it's a fun process. It's a fun thing, and ultimately, the whole point of this was to just talk about how we had a fun task that we don't typically always. I don't always typically get, but was a fun reprieve, a fun creative outlet, and I wanted to share it because of the process was rewarding in those senses of just that discovery through creating that allowed me to say and see and put on and take note and put on a shelf that said, hey, I realize these are like principles we all should do while we're being creative, and to get out and do something that you don't do all the time.
Yeah, I think it was a winning exercise for a lot of reasons. It may not see, one of those shirts may not see the light of day at MX, but like we said, those ideas could evolve into something that you or I do on our own separately, or some of the others that contributed. But it was also, because it was such a short timeline, we were able to remind ourselves of what it feels like to kind of dig down deep and be faced with problems, and how do we work around it. We wanted 4 horsemen and had to settle with one of these characters, and how do we continue to push through it and not just throw up our hands, because there are so many designers, I think, and illustrators out there that would have at that point just said, hey, I don't have time to get this done. I'm gonna have to bow out. Thanks for the opportunity, and so I think that sets you apart, Trevor, for that short time period, and that you're able to work through it. And
you gave me that option. You said you could, or you don't have to. You're not required. Yeah. And it was that I was like, actually, I really want to try my hand at this, and I set myself that goal of, okay, it doesn't matter, just go put, set a timer and just say, I'm spending this long to find the reference, I'm spending this long to execute on the thumbnail and the rough and the composition, and just because I wanted to make sure I reached the deadline. And and at the same time, I was like having my 17th anniversary, and so I got the final result a little after celebrating some of that evening, but stayed up, and that's when I was putting down the colors and sending it off.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
but yeah, kind of definitely keeping close to the promise that I would get it done within that time frame versus trying to say, actually, you said I could extend to like Monday or something. I was like, no, I'm not going to extend. I'm going to do it within that time frame and those constraints, which can either help you be more creative and or just limit you to, you know, things. And it's good to have those exercises to limit yourself and just say, done is better than perfect, and to lose some of that perfectionism, and just done is better than perfect. And we all can learn from that and still be proud of it. So
yeah, and I'll tell you from like the employer perspective, you know, since you're working as a contractor for me, that just goes a long way, because you're just a trusted resource that I know that regardless of what the request is, you'll deliver what you can, and it won't be because that's so much more valuable than someone being so much of a perfectionist that they just decide halfway through, like, you know, yeah, I'm not going to be able to deliver by this time. I am going to take you up on your offer to deliver it 2 or 3 days late, or you said 1 day late, I'm going to do it 2 days late because you'll just be so happy that I made it that much better. But from the business side, it is so much more valuable to have somebody that just delivers something. You can then give it to the stakeholders to provide some feedback. They can see that we created something. Whereas if, you know, in a lot of cases, yeah, we just need something, and done is better than perfect. And so if you hadn't delivered, sometimes I find myself having to, okay, I'm going to work late just to create something, because we said we'd have 3 concepts, and because one of our people didn't deliver, we only had 2, so I need to do that. And so that just so it's always better. Yeah.
But at the same time, I've even had yeah, sorry to interrupt. I'm just going to say, at the same time, sometimes when you do deliver up front and they like it, they might even say, you know, actually, we will extend it just another day or 2 to refine it even further, if you and make these revisions. You know, like, even though they're under a deadline, they're kind of like, we like it so much at this point, and it surprised us. Why don't you go ahead and take 2 more days to add this revision and make it better, or to do what you thought, like you mentioned, if I had another day, I could have made this happen, but here it is. And they could say, actually, take that other day and make that happen, you know. So sometimes you get what you want, sometimes they're like, no, this is fine, just let's go with it.
But the key there is that you give them that opportunity to make that decision, rather than you taking that decision from them and just saying, oh, I'm going to take an extra day or whatever. So I think there's just so many great lessons that can be gleaned from this experience, and then it's also important to, out of the gates, if there's little even an inkling of doubt, or for some reason your gut is telling you, like, no, I got to pass on this project, then I think that's definitely the right decision. Is something I need to learn to do more of, is say no. And but then you've given that requester, the client or whatever, that information right up front, like, okay, this person is saying no, and in some cases that may make them want you even more, but it's better to say no at the outset rather than, yeah, I'll do it, and then 3 days in at the 11th hour or whatever, then you're like, yeah, I'm not going to be able to do
it. Don't miss your promises, for sure. That's I need to always be better at that too. Not always perfect.
I mean, none of us are perfect, but it's just a reminder that it's those little things that really stand out and are the difference between, you know, repeat work with a client or not.
Absolutely. Well, Ike, I hope you can show the little bit I made as well, link to
Yeah.
YouTube or something, and same with maybe overlap some of the images, just so that there's some context if they do watch it on YouTube versus listening to it through some other stream. So
Yeah, 100%. So obviously in this podcast format, we didn't want to show too much because there's a lot of y'all that are just listening, and we didn't want you to feel lost. So yeah, check out the Create or Die YouTube channel for the full awesome sauce that Trevor produced on his process, and it's super insightful, and I think will be inspiring to a lot of our listeners for sure.
yeah, you got to do the same. You got to put yours up there too. There's your challenge.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
No, we'll do. So, Trevor, as always, it's been a pleasure, and I appreciate you coming to me with this awesome idea for this episode.
Yeah. And happy 4th of July and American independence, and I hope you celebrate it so well. So
Indeed. And I don't know if you realize this, but this is the 40th episode of Create or Die. So
what?
We got lots of
Nice.
fours. 4th of July, 40th. It's a good thing.
All too good. Well, I'm honored to be part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, that was a fun one. I think there were some good insights in there. Some knowledge nugs were thrown your way. Now it's up to you on whether or not you're going to go ahead and consume those and use them in your daily creativity. Okay? That's a real word. Look it up. Just kidding. But yeah, and like was said, Trevor went above and beyond. He created this kind of 5-minute tutorial where you can see his illustrations as he talks through his process. So give that a watch as well over there on the Create or Die YouTube channel. That's at create-or-die. That's where you're going to find that right there in the videos. So give that a watch. And until next time, my friends, keep on creating. Create or die.